It's roughly 5,000 years ago. You're standing in a market. You have fish, fresh fish, good fish, the kind of fish that took you 3 hours to catch this morning and smells like effort and success. You want bread, simple enough. You walk up to the bread guy, you hold out your fish, and the bread guy looks at you, looks at your fish, and says no, he doesn't want fish, he wants wood. So you go find the wood guy. The wood guy doesn't want fish either. He wants cloth. The cloth guy wants grain. The grain guy wants fish, but only the dried kind, not the fresh kind. And definitely not on a Wednesday. You are standing in the middle of a functioning society and you cannot eat. This is the problem that accidentally changed everything. This is how money got invented. Sort of. Not really. It's complicated. Let's go. Here's the story everyone knows. Humans started with barter. You give me fish, I give you bread. Simple, direct, no middleman. Then barter got complicated, so we invented money to make trading easier. Clean, logical, sensible. The kind of story that makes complete sense at 8 years old and nobody ever questions again. There is just one problem with this story. It is almost certainly not true. Economists taught it for over 200 years. Adam Smith wrote about it in 1776. It became the official origin story of money in basically every economics textbook ever printed. And yet when anthropologists actually went out into the world and looked for evidence of societies that used barter as their primary way of trading, they found almost nothing, not reduced evidence, not partial evidence. Almost nothing. Researchers have studied hundreds of ancient and indigenous societies across every continent. What they found is that barter, as a regular system between strangers, basically did not exist at scale. It happened occasionally. Usually between people from different groups who had no other relationship. It was the exception, not the foundation. So if barter wasn't first, what was? The answer is something that sounds completely obvious once you hear it, and yet somehow never makes it into the standard economics textbook version of history. The answer is trust, not money, not metal, not grain, not shells, just people deciding that they owed each other something. And keeping track. Think about how an actual small community works. You help me hunt today. You don't expect me to immediately hand you something in return right there in the forest. You expect that at some point, I'll return the favor. I owe you. That's it. That's the whole system. 2 people, 1 obligation, no coins required. This worked for a very long time. In small groups where everyone knew everyone, reputation and memory were enough. You knew who was reliable and who wasn't. You knew who always paid back and who always had an excuse. Social pressure did the job that money would later do. Then something changed. Communities got bigger, and trade started happening between people who didn't know each other at all. And that is where things got genuinely interesting. In Mesopotamia, roughly 5,000 years ago, temple administrators were dealing with a problem. They were managing enormous amounts of resources. Grain coming in, grain going out, workers being paid, debts being recorded, obligations being tracked across hundreds of people, and someone somewhere had an idea, write it down. The oldest writing we have found anywhere on Earth is not poetry. It is not history. It is not the name of a king or a prayer to a god. It is accounting. Clay tablets from ancient Sumer, dated to around 3000 BCE, recording who owes how much barley to the temple. We invented writing to track debt. That sentence should stop you for a second. The entire technology of written language, the thing that eventually gave us literature and law and science, started because someone needed to remember that a farmer owed the temple 30 units of grain. Debt came before money. Accounting came before the alphabet. The spreadsheet came before the poem. And nobody planned any of it. Debt and trust worked, until they didn't. The problem with a trust-based system is obvious once you see it. Trust only works between people who know each other, or who share a community with real consequences for breaking your word. If you cheat someone in your village, everyone finds out. Your reputation is gone. That punishment is real. But what happens when you want to trade with a stranger from 3 villages over, someone you have never met, will probably never see again, and who has absolutely no reason to care what your neighbors think of them? You cannot give a stranger a debt. A stranger won't accept your word that you'll pay them back someday. You need to give them something real, something they can hold, something that has value, not because you promised it, but because everyone already agrees it does. So people started using commodities, grain, cattle, shells, salt. These were things that everyone needed, everyone understood, and everyone agreed had value. You didn't need to trust the person, you trusted the thing. And this worked surprisingly well for a long time. The word salary comes from salt. Roman soldiers were paid partly in salt because it was that valuable, preserving food, seasoning, trade across long distances. Salt was portable, divisible, and universally wanted. The same logic applied to grain, to shells, to cattle, but commodities had problems. Grain rots. Cattle die. Shells are awkward to count in large numbers. Salt dissolves in rain. You could not build an entire civilization's financial system on things that could be eaten by insects or washed away in a storm. Something better was needed. Metal solved almost everything. It doesn't rot. It doesn't die, it doesn't dissolve in rain. You can cut it into pieces, melt it back together, carry it in your pocket, and it will still be exactly what it was when you started. From a purely practical standpoint, metal is an almost perfect trading material. Mesopotamia figured this out around 3000 BCE, not with coins yet. Nobody was stamping faces on anything. They were simply using silver, raw chunks of it, weighed on scales at the moment of every transaction. You wanted to buy grain? You handed over a piece of silver. The merchant weighed it. If it was the right weight, the deal was done. The shekel, which most people recognize as a modern Israeli currency, was not originally a coin at all. It was a unit of weight. 1 shekel of silver meant a specific amount of silver by mass. The money was the metal was the money. This system worked across enormous distances and between complete strangers. You didn't need to know the person. You didn't need to trust them. You both trusted the scale progress. Real, genuine progress. But it still had a problem nobody had solved yet. The problem with weighed metal is that anyone can shave a little off the edge, hand over a chunk of silver, pocket some shavings, and the person on the other end has no easy way to know they received slightly less than agreed. Fraud was built into the system. Every single transaction required a scale, an expert eye, and a baseline level of suspicion toward the other person. Someone needed to guarantee the metal. That someone turned out to be a king around 600 BCE in Lydia, a kingdom in what is now Western Turkey. A ruler started stamping lumps of electrum with an official mark. Electrum is a naturally occurring alloy of gold and silver. The stamp was the guarantee. It said this piece has been checked, measured, and approved by the authority of the king himself. You do not need to weigh it. You do not need to test it. You trust the stamp. That is the coin. That is the entire invention. Not the metal, not the shape, the stamp. The authority behind it. Money stopped being about the physical thing you were holding. It became about who was telling you it was worth something. And that changes everything. Here is the part that nobody tells you in school. Money has no value, not reduced value, not questionable value. Literally no inherent value whatsoever. A gold coin is just a shaped piece of metal. A paper note is just a rectangle of cotton fiber with ink on it. A number on a screen is just a number on a screen. None of these things can feed you, shelter you, or keep you warm on their own. What gives money value is one thing and one thing only. Everyone agrees that it does. That is it. That is the entire secret. Money is a collective agreement, a shared story that enough people believe in that it functions as reality. Some academics have called it the most successful mass hallucination in human history. More people on Earth have faith in money than follow any single religion. Every economy on the planet runs on the collective decision to keep believing. And the truly strange part is that knowing this changes nothing. You can understand completely that money is a social construct, close this video, and still need to pay rent on Friday. The hallucination works whether you believe in it or not. So here is where we actually landed. Nobody invented money. There was no moment, no committee, no single genius who sat down and said, I have a solution for all of this. It started with a debt between neighbors. It became clay tablets in a Mesopotamian temple. It turned into weighed silver, then stamped coins, then paper backed by governments, then numbers on screens backed by collective faith in systems most people don't understand and nobody fully controls. Every single step was a solution to the previous step's problem. Every single step created a new problem nobody anticipated, and it is still happening. Cryptocurrency, digital payments, whatever comes after those. The story of money is not finished. It has never been finished. We are still accidentally inventing it, just like we always have. What do you think comes next? Let me know in the comments. See you soon.